Whenever someone sees one of my tiny paintings and falls in love with it, I honestly get this little rush of gratitude. It still amazes me that someone can connect so deeply with something that's only 6 by 4 inches. There's something really special about that. This little blue jay might be small, but paintings like this have completely changed my relationship with art. Not because they're easier, but because painting small made it easier for me to paint again. For a long time, I believed every painting had to be something extraordinary. It had to be bigger, more detailed, more impressive. At art school, I remember hearing over and over again that bigger work was somehow more important. Whether that was really what it was meant to be, to mean or not, that's definitely how I interpreted it. So every time I sat down to paint, I felt like I had to prove something. And when every painting feels like it has to be your best work ever, starting becomes incredibly difficult. If you've ever looked at a blank canvas and convinced yourself not to begin because the pressure felt overwhelming, I completely understand. Looking back now, the thing that changed everything for me wasn't becoming a better painter, it was just becoming someone who painted more often with more consistency. And I know people say consistency means everything, and actually, it really, really does. Consistency is so much better than nothing at all. And painting tiny paintings has really, really allowed me to do that. And it's changed the way that I do art and my relationship with art into a much more positive one. While I paint this blue jay today, I thought I'd share why these tiny paintings have become such an important part of my creative life. Maybe you're an artist who's struggling to find your way back to creating. Maybe you just love watching paintings come to life. Or maybe like me, you just love birds. Whatever brought you here, I am really, really happy that you came to watch. Wherever I start a painting, I always remind myself that the beginning isn't meant to look beautiful. It's just meant to exist. One thing I completely fell in love with over the past couple of years is painting underpaintings. I almost always begin with a burnt sienna, and honestly, there are moments where I look at that first layer and I just think it looks great exactly as it is. But it's funny how a painting can already have so much life before the color even goes on. Now I'm slowly introducing the color, blocking in the darkest values and trying not to get distracted by the tiny details. I've really, really learned with these tiny paintings that sometimes you don't always have to go crazy on the details, and it's okay to be a bit looser with your brush strokes and just kind of go for a feeling and emotion rather than trying to get everything perfect. Painting wildlife has taught me that you don't have to paint every feather. In fact, some artists might say you probably shouldn't. I think that's something that I've also learned is again just to be more free with every painting. And there's such small paintings that I can really get stuck in and explore new ideas much more quickly than if I was spending months and months and months on a huge painting. I naturally do love details and I do love realism, but teaching myself to paint a little bit looser has been quite a challenge. But I feel like one that I'm starting to learn to love and more importantly enjoy. I think our brain is really good at filling in the blanks. So I think I'm learning that I don't always have to be perfect with every single painting that I create. And again, these tiny paintings just give me that freedom that I've probably been craving for such a long time. Painting small has really taught me something I've never expected. I finished painting builds confidence. Unfinished paintings just build doubt. For years, I collected ideas instead of completed work, sketchbooks of ideas that I would paint one day, reference photos saved for that one day that I might use them, half finished panels stacked around my studio. And to be honest, there's still quite a few unfinished pieces, larger pieces. And I'm just sitting here looking at them and they're staring at me. But yeah, every unfinished painting that I didn't complete sort of quietly convinced me that I wasn't making any progress. And then I remember finishing one of my first tiny mini bird paintings, and it felt like such an achievement. I just felt like I'd accomplished so much in that one tiny painting. And it wasn't my best painting and it wasn't, what I was used to doing, but it was finished. And I remember looking at it thinking, I found that so much easier than painting bigger pieces. And then I just thought, well, if it was that easy, I can just do another one tomorrow. And then that just kept growing and I kept painting every day. And that feeling just changed everything for me. It just made me feel more confident. It made me feel like I could finish pieces. I'd rather paint and complete 10 little paintings than spend months trying to create that one perfect masterpiece. Every tiny little piece of artwork that I create, I learn something new, and then I can take that to the next one. Even if I don't really love it the first time, I always seem to be learning something that I can take into the next piece, and each piece becomes better. I'm learning and I'm growing with each tiny piece that I create. Painting birds has really become my favorite thing to paint, and honestly, I don't think I would have discovered that if I hadn't started making these tiny paintings. I was finishing work more often and I had the freedom to experiment with different subjects, and I found what I truly loved. I've always loved birds. Whenever I'm out walking or driving somewhere or just pop into the shops, I find myself always stopping to notice the little birds in my local area. They make me slow down. They remind me to notice the little things that are around me. And the more closely you look at nature, the more fascinating it becomes. And the colours are never what you really expect them to be. And I think I love trying to bring that into my paintings now. Something else happened as well while I started painting these tiny little paintings. People started to buy my work. Not immediately, and not because I became an incredible painter overnight. It happened because I finally had paintings to share and I finally had finished pieces that I could sell. And honestly, that has changed everything. I just feel like I'm in a different place now and I'm able to produce things and feel confident that I'm finishing the pieces that I'm starting. And every time someone chooses one of my paintings, it feels like a huge privilege. The fact that of all the artwork in the world, they've chosen something that I've made with my own hands. And I don't think I'll ever stop being excited about that and just really happy and grateful. There's definitely also something special about original paintings. And for me, my love is oils. We live in such a digital world now. Like we scroll through hundreds and thousands of images every day, but an original painting is unique. It's different. Every brushstroke is exactly where the artist wanted it to be. The tiny textures that catch the light differently throughout the day. No print can ever quite recreate that feeling of a real original painting. Sometimes I find myself wondering where my little paintings end up. Maybe this blue jay will sit on someone's bookshelf beside their favorite novels. Maybe it'll hang in a cozy hallway. Maybe it'll remind someone of a bird they used to watch in the garden with a parent or a grandparent. I will never really know where they end up, But I love imagining that something I've painted quietly becomes part of someone's everyday life. Sometimes it just might be keeping someone company, and I think there's something really, really special about that. So as I come to the end of this painting, I'm just slowing down, making tiny adjustments. There are probably things another artist would notice that maybe they would have done differently, whether it's just brightening the eye a little, softening the edges, cooling the shadows. But I think that's what makes every painting unique is every artist will have their own way of adding those final touches. But yeah, I just love it when I get to the point when these little birds start staring back at me and start feeling like they are alive. And that is the best part. If somebody had told me a few years ago that painting 6 by 4 inch paintings would become such an important part of my life, I don't think I would have believed them. I honestly always thought that painting bigger was better, working longer, making everything more ambitious. Instead, painting small has given me permission to simply enjoy creating again, and that just seems like a huge accomplishment in itself. And strangely enough, that's when everything started to fall into place. I think I was happy, I was painting, I just got into that flow. I painted more, I improved more, I shared more, and people connected with the work more. I've painted one or two slightly bigger pieces since then, up to about 8 by 8 inches. And I enjoyed those too, but if I'm honest, I think I'll always have a soft spot for these tiny paintings. I could honestly happily paint them every single day. Sometimes the smallest decisions end up changing everything. The Blue Jay is finally coming together now, and this is my favourite moment. The moment it stops looking like paint and starts feeling like a bird looking back at me. I don't think I'll ever get tired of that. So, if you've been waiting for the perfect time to start something creative, maybe don't start with something bigger. Start with something smaller. Paint a little panel, a little canvas. Write the first page. Make the first sketch. You never know where those small beginnings might lead. If there's one thing I'd love you to take away from this video, it's that creativity doesn't always begin with a giant leap. Sometimes it begins with one tiny, small action, one tiny brushstroke, one tiny sentence, or simply giving yourself permission just to begin. These little paintings have changed my life in a way I never expected, and I hope they remind you that small things really can become something extraordinary. Thank you so much for spending some time with me while I paint this cute little blue jay bird and watching up until this point. I would honestly genuinely love to know in the comments if there's one small thing that you've done in your life that's made a huge difference. And if this little blue jay eventually finds its forever home, I hope it brings someone as much joy to look at as it brought me to paint. Take care, keep creating, and I'll see you in the next one.